host has started broadcasting
Hello,
the
ladies
live
and
streaming service.
gentlemen. Welcome to a August 31st edition of the MSP Initiative MSP Talk. That is the very last day of the summer, and here we are, really just about to fire into conference season. I feel like all year has been conference season. I digress. Let's just get some general housekeeping out of the way, and then we'll get into the good stuff. So, mspinitiative.com. This is where all the stuff that we do is posted. So this session, for example, is being recorded, and it will be available in podcast and video format at mspinitiative.com under sessions. We completed our Community Minds event. This is our first post MSP Channel Strong Tour event. This went really well. We had a bunch of expert speakers and MSPs on panels. I really think that we created a more interesting blueprint that's past the trade show booth for whatever it's worth. I think this one went really well. I got some really good feedback. We're going to start to plan the next one of these. So probably coming in 2024. Stay tuned. So for the rest of this year, we now have already completed the MSP Community Boat Party. This was in conjunction with Taylor Business Group and the Big Conference, as well as the other, kind of block parties we've done earlier in the year in Europe. So now we have two left to close out 2023. One is going to be tied with DattoCon here in the US. So if you're headed to Miami, we will be hosting the official after party for DattoCon. This will be on night 2 of the conference. I know we usually do this on night 1, but we shifted over a day. We're doing this at the Hard Rock, right on the water, down the street from the Intercontinental Hotel, which is the main hotel for the DattoCon event. However, if you're in South Florida and you're an MSP and you want to join us, there's nothing stopping you. So please do that. Notice that you can register as an MSP or anything other than an MSP. So definitely give us a try. And then the last one, this is the big one to close out the year, in conjunction with IT Nation in November, on November 8th. We'll be doing the MSP Community Block Party there as well. Last year we had the All-American Rejects. We'll be announcing our entertainment for this year's party soon. But that'll be on November 8th, which is the first night of IT Nation after the welcome reception, 9 p.m. until hopefully you are not falling down, but has had enough entertainment for the evening, probably around 2 o'clock if you can make it, till that point. So check it out, the MSP Community Block Party on November 8th in Orlando. Do not miss that one either. We have some community offers. These are just IT vendors that are putting some hookups or some special offers out to the community. Check them out. And then lastly is our industry calendar, which probably looks like a lot of other industry calendars. We are starting to get 2024 dates, and we will start to populate anything that we know about there so that you can plan accordingly. So that is all of the housekeeping. Today, we bring on Shay, I believe we said that correctly, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the circles and in the sandbox. But Shay, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. Great to see you again, George.
Absolutely. I saw you've been out and about this year. I saw you in Europe, saw you a little bit here on the US side. So you're definitely getting your airline miles this year.
Yes, I am.
That's good. Tell us, for anyone that hasn't met you personally, I'd love you to share your story a little bit so people understand like your background and how we get into what you do and why it makes sense for people in IT and MSP land. Go for it.
Okay, so my name is Shay. I am the CEO of Kamanja. I will talk a little bit more about Kamanja later, but we are doing, in general, compliance as a service for managed service providers. So where it came from and why we're doing it. So my background is a Linux engineer. I used to work in a startup company in Israel, and we used to struggle with compliance. Then we asked our managed service provider, hey, we need to do compliance because it's requested by our clients, and he didn't have any solution for us. So what we did, me and my partner, it's okay, let's learn how we do ISO, GDPR, and that's implemented in our company. So right after that, once we finish everything and implement, and we realize that if we add as a small medium business structure of solution that help us do it more easily and without all the feature kill solution and buying tons of products and make this journey very easy. So maybe it can help us. So we spoke with our MSP, do for them a quick mock-up, and this is how Kamanja can build. So all of our technology knowledge came into a one single platform together with the MSPs in Israel. And in last October 2022, we've been in US. It wasn't a big buzz. I met many great people that became a good friend and learned a lot in the market. And now we just, in the 1st of August, we are recruit our first US person that is our channel director, Martin Perkins. Amazing guy. And now we're speaking.
Awesome. No, that's great. I mean, it's amazing how many, there's definitely a software, startup community in Israel, right? We see a lot of great companies come out of that part of the world, and some smart people, although, the world is a big place, but you guys have definitely, been throwing some home runs there, pretty consistently. Obviously the IT community globally is really big, but when you talk about the subsection managed services companies who largely target, like not enterprise, right? Let's just put a number to it. Let's call it 250 employees, probably at the top, but mostly usually under 100 employees. I think a lot of people, zoom out and say, hey, listen, we're hearing a lot of mixed signals, right? You hear, the federal government saying one thing with all their different agencies. You hear the insurance companies just trying to make sure that they don't pay, go bankrupt because they, don't want to pay out, crazy things. And then everywhere in between, you're hearing just different shades of gray, where effectively they're just saying, hey, something's coming, we don't know what. And by the way, we haven't put out anything as a community to really self-police. I guess CompTIA came out with a trust mark program like within the last 12 months, and that's really, really new. Some people, I know the Matt Lees of the world say it kind of, takes a lot of different concepts from a lot of different, compliance, programs and kind of meshes them together so that like it kind of touches a lot of different areas, whether it's CMMC or ISO 1 blah, 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 or all that, like it just touches 3 or 4 or 5 different of these. But it sounds like from talking with a lot of MSPs, especially recently, that if you overlap a lot of the compliances, there's like, I don't know, 70 or 80% overlap. Does that sound right to you?
It's the exact number. Yeah, it's the exact number. Let me tell you even deeper. Most of the cyber insurance and another companies that requested you, and other entities that requested you filling their questionnaires and those stuff are based on compliance. So once once you are, for example, following CIS control, NIST CSF doesn't matter, and you have a good structure of your compliance, then it will be more easy for you to do most of the things. So you just need to know, you just need to have the right solution or the right knowledge how to answer the right question in a minimal time, because as an MSP, you don't want to waste your time of filling papers all the time and try to find gaps, right? So you must have something that help you doing all of that easily. Yeah. So, but you're right.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, so back to the overlaps, 70 to 80%. That's more than the majority. Okay, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So like, I don't understand. Like, if I'm an MSP who's never seen any of these compliances before, and I go to try and figure out what am I doing today, and does it even fall into the radar? Would you say that they fall at, generally, right? I'm just averaging. Are they already doing half of this already, 50%, or is it lower? I'm just trying to understand, like, so, I'm not trying to say the brand new guy that just started yesterday, or I'm not trying to say the guy's been in business for 20 years. Like, What's the general average?
So it depends. We need to split it into two different conversations. One, it's if you're following privacy, and the second, it's security. There's two different methods. So first of all, you need to understand what you're handling. So if you're handling clients' information, you must following the privacy controls, because how do you handle the end client information? How do you save it? What do you collect? Credit card, sensitive information, and all of those kind of things. The other thing, it's about security. How do you secure your infrastructure? So let's say if you're, for example, here in Israel, when we want to work with the US entity, most of the companies asking us, you must following SOC 2. So SOC 2, I can't say it's a compliance framework. It's like SOC. It's if you compare it to SOC 1, it's like the finance report. So SOC 2, it's more security and kind of privacy report. So once we did this one and we already did ISO, the overlap is 70%. So even more. But if I go to GDPR, for example, or CCPA that are quite the same, they handling privacy, then the privacy control that are in the SOC 2 covering 20% of the privacy control of the GDPR. But if you're comparing the security framework from NIST, CIS, ISO, SOC 2, the security control, most of them are doing the same. So that's the idea. So first of all, you need to understand what you're following and which information do you collect, how do you store it, how do you handle it. And then you need to start from some general. I all the time used to recommend about ISO, because this is the most framework that I love, because you have a stamp on it. Because you can do ISO, then you go to auditor and give you a stamp. So this is another better proof of it, and it's not so expensive. But most of the people in US like to do CIS and NIST CSF. It's a good framework too, don't get me wrong. But when you do ISO, like you have a certificate that you're following something from an auditor. It's not so cheap. It's not cheap, but it's not expensive as much. And the implementation, it's quite easy and simple if you know how to do that. And once you have one of those base framework, this is how I like to call it, base framework, then you can go out to the rest of them. And again, it's dependent on what you cover, privacy or security. If you do ISO and then you go to SOC 2, then you go to CIS, then you go to NIST CSF, you're covering a lot of those frameworks. But you must understand what is the overlap. So for example, in our platform, once you do ISO, we're telling you automatically what you cover in all of the frameworks, CMMC, NIST, EPA, and all of those things, and even in cyber insurance. So that's the idea. But this is a lot of, you need to have a lot of knowledge, because compliance, it's like tax. It's like many shades of grays, right? So you really need to understand what you do and how you do it. So
that's
why
I mean, that's very interesting that you present it in that way, because like at the end of the day, I think the end customers that you're servicing are driving a lot of how you decide where to start, right? Like if you have a lot of customers in medical versus finance versus, pharmaceutical, I don't know, pick your industries, right? Like these people really force you down a path, right? One thing's for sure, a lot of MSPs will come to you, and I'm sure you've heard this before. Well, I'm not holding any data. Like I have access to be able to, deliver IT services, but I don't actually possess either the customer or the end customer of the customer's information. What do you push back when they say that? Because like on their servers, on their cloud storage, on their hard drives, like none of that is being stored, right?
Yeah, but the MSP are managing it. So they have access to that information. Even it's not them, they have an access to that information. So the one who should, it's a good question, because now the question around it, it's all the question here is around the liability. Because if everything is stored in my end, okay, so it's mean, let's take it even step back. Compliance is about risk management, right? So first of all, you need to understand what is a risk. So who is the risk owner? Does it the MSP? Does it the SMB? I don't know. We need to think about it. Right after it, when the even all the infrastructure, all the servers, everything is on-prem on the client side, still the MSP are the one who manage the configuration. and the ones who have an access to this data is this way or another. And then the question is, okay, under which liability if some security breaches occur? Is the MSP or the SMB? So there is a long story about it. I spoke about it a lot, and right now it doesn't matter.
Let me throw a
Yeah.
wrinkle at you then.
Yeah.
What happens if it's co-managed situation? The customer has internal IT. They come to the MSP or IT service provider and they're just doing specific things, right? Hey, I'm assigning one project to you, or you're providing just one service. Same rules, or is the liability now different because it's not ongoing, right? It's very targeted engagement.
Yeah. So for my opinion, it's like, again, is the question is around what data MSP have an access to. If this data is not sensitive, this is not under I classification, then, you know, who cares? Really like that, right? But if it's a public information or informational information, so it's not a big deal. The question around, and you're right, the question around what is the type of data that the MSP have an access. So if you have an access to sensitive information, 100%, the liability, you have your shared liability, so shared responsibility on both of them. But for my opinion, but if you get an access, for example, you're doing a project and you get an access, for example, only to Office 365, maybe configure something not security related, maybe configure Office 365, create some users and etc. And they follow the policies and the best practice of Microsoft. So maybe they don't have shared liability because they done one configuration and then they out, they have closed the connection. I think when speaking about liability and compliance, it's more about the ongoing stuff. So because compliance is not a destination, it's a journey. It's all the time you need to manage that, right? So it's all the time need to be managed. And for example, if you do a project base, you must understand that your policies and your procedure when you do a project are secure. For example, even if you're a MSP that do only, for example, automation project, do only development processes, you must understand that you need to follow not all the framework, but maybe you must follow secure development lifecycle, right? And have some pre-built questionnaire around it. So it's really depend. And again, it's quite a gray area, but I recommend all the time, if you don't want to spend time and money, try to follow base framework like CIS, CSF, it's dependent on what you're doing, and start from there. So
would you say that, all right, so that we've kind of narrowed into two lanes, right? I'm doing ongoing versus point in time, one-time thing, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like, and we've talked to, you know, the legal, you know, superheroes of the world. They're like, hey, we don't care what it is. There needs to be an MSA, there needs to be a scope of work, etc. Are you attaching your security frameworks that you're following as part of the initial conversation with your customer?
All the time. All the time. I used to work in a project company that we did infrastructure for software. We only did infrastructure. So we, you know, to build a trust with the client and tell them, look, what we do is really secure. We're following ISO. We used to be ISO compliance, and we tell you, even in the beginning, they say, how do we make sure that our information that's stored on your, for example, Draw.io, just for drowning thing, are secure. No one exposed to it. You don't have to worry. We are following ISO compliance. We have our own procedures and policies that make sure that the information that we store during the project is secure. We're using multi-factor authentication, we're using strong password, we do yada, 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 but we're following some framework, and here's the certification. In Israel, it's very common to add those certification on the proposal that people understand, look, we are following some guidelines, so we are trusted vendor.
Interesting. I gotta think that the pizza shop down the street doesn't really care. I mean, like, you know, their credit card system works, they're putting orders in, the oven's cooking, life's good. Obviously, the larger the company or the more, or the vertical of the company does make a difference, right? Like, I would say PCI compliance is not rocket science, right? I mean, like, as an MSP, Do you have access to the credit card terminal that's processing the transactions? No. You know what I mean? Like, it may be that simple, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
not your problem. But I think things get gray, though. To your point, you mentioned Office 365. You have no idea what data is in the email,
Yep.
right? You have no idea what data is in the attachments, in the OneDrive files, in the whatever.
Yep.
So, like, I almost hate to say it, but like the unorganizedness of the end customer may complicate this conversation when it comes to the MSP, no?
Yes. And again, it's back to the question, which information do they have access to? Right. So for example,
But hold on, let me pause you. They may not even know that data exists, though. So like, it's
Yeah.
like you only find out after something bad happens and somebody comes to investigate and they said, well, you have Office 365 admin access. You're like, so I was just
Yeah.
adding and removing users. I never logged into a mailbox. They're like, but well, the mailbox has all of this stuff. And you're like, I didn't know what the end customer was doing. Instead of them going to a secure website to enter their credit card, maybe they're still doing good old fashioned PDFs, credit card authorization forms. And that form is in the form of an attachment on an email. I didn't know that.
You're right. And this is why it's a gray area. This is why it's a gray area. And managed service providers, many of them now start offering compliance service as part of their basics packages. Why? Because of those questions. Because now, if they're not following their client not following any framework, they expose the MSP business into a risk. Because now the liability, if they manage, is there. Is the MSP liability, right? So I giving you back your question. So under whose liability is that? And you can answer it.
Listen, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe I should, take up a side project and work on that at night. But if it was me, if somebody's asking me the question, on August 31st, 2023, I argue, well, if the end customer is just, wild west, they're using their email as a filing cabinet, everything and anything is there. And like, I never told anybody that's what I was doing. I just said, I have a problem with my email. Like, I expect that I have to, just like I call a plumber or electrician to come into my place because there's a problem. I understand I'm opening the door for them to come fix that problem, but then they leave. Right. And like, if sometime later on, after they came to fix that, they had, my password was password 123, and all of a sudden my email got compromised. Is it right or is it fair? I mean, I know the answer in America is anybody can sue for anything. Got it. But is it right or is it fair? And does the argument hold if I take an IT company to court and said, hey, they just came in and I asked them to do this one thing, but sometime later I got hit and now I'm blaming them that my password was password 123 and then they should pay. Like, I don't know. That's a weak argument.
Yeah, and you're right. I agree with you. It really depends. It really depends, and it's like I'm hearing a lot like the MSP should educate their clients about security, and they must do strong password, do multi-factor authentication, and if they don't want to do it and don't listen to us, so maybe it will not be a good client for us. Why? Because they put our business into a risk. But then again, those questions around who is liability, who should be on the court, it's the MSP or the end client. So who can suit who? So I really understand what you say, but it's all about education and the client. And if I do a project and like, for example, again, I'm not a lawyer, and on a common sense for previous experience, it's like, what is the scope? What do I doing? And right after that, if something happened, this is under your liability, because when I just get out from your environment, it's yours. You're the one who should handle it, following that, and just to prove that everything that I said is configured as you expect it to do. There you go. But this is one-time project, which it's fine. And maybe, again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just from experience. It's like, okay, now we can do nothing with it. But when you're maintaining something and when you're doing recurring services, it's a different story. It's a different story.
There is a cost to compliance. It's usually not one and done, right? Like if you mentioned SOC 2, you mentioned ISO, you mentioned all these things, like usually that stuff takes a lot of upfront effort, but then like you also need to keep up with it, right? It doesn't just last forever. So, I'd love to get into what the cost of compliance is in a second, but like generally speaking, if my cost of doing business is now here and not the floor, right? I'm not just, starting. In order for me to even cover that cost, I need to question whether it makes sense for me to do something that's like, hey, that's only an hour or two of work. I need to pay the lights. I need to cover my costs. Like my minimum is X, right? I need to be able to do this much with you or else I got to I got to move on. Do you think that that's a reasonable thought? It sounds like it should be. Like nobody wants to work, not even for free. They're losing money if they have this cost of compliance now that they have to now cover.
It's a good question, but when there is a law that forcing you doing it, like if you're in California and you have the CCPA, and if you're in Europe, you have the GDPR, you must do it. You can't run away from it, right? And if it's a client request, so a big client request, so you must take in consideration those costs for you. Compliance is expensive as hell. Let's, this is the base thing. So it can be start from 30 to 50 grand, something like that, easily.
Okay.
So if you're a small, medium business and you want to do compliance just for one time and there is a maintenance, this is what I'm hearing a lot from MSP that working with us in US, and this is what they used to charge or cost that are around it, because compliance experts are expensive and they're hard to find. When they find them, they are super expensive. In Israel, the prices are quite different. It's like you can do ISO in 4 grand, something like that. Yeah, for a small company, 20 employees, something like that. It really depends. But
I mean, 30 to 50 grand as you're like, let's say if I'm starting an MSP for the first time today, let's say I was working internal IT, they laid everybody off. Now I'm going to start an IT company. That's not a small number to get started. That's a pretty big.
This is the end. This is what will be cost to the small medium business. The MSP will be charged a little bit less because he want to have around his labor hours. You want to have maintain hours. You need to buy a lot of solution, and doing compliance easily. It's around 100 hours without any additional solution. So now it's depend on your labor cost, and the time of implementation. It's around 6 months. Doesn't matter what framework you are doing. And now you need to buy tons of solution from supply chain management, phishing training, training and awareness, using a risk management tool, using questionnaires to your employees, manage a lot of things. And I didn't speak even about vulnerability assessment and when you need penetration. So also penetration and more thing, and all the process, communicate with your clients, understand what you have, collect the evidence, a lot of things. So
wow,
it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things to do. It's most of the time you need someone that, as we say, it's a gray area, that someone that understands what the framework says, the compliance framework, what it says, and then translate to you to human read, so that someone can understand what they actually mean. And yeah.
So you don't expect who's not in your field to pick up the documents and be able to understand them, is what you're telling me.
That's the common sense. Yeah, and this is what we try to do. So our vision is like simplify compliance for MSP and their clients. So this is actually what we did. It's like take all of those frameworks and translate them to human read, and give all the tools during the way that they can implement it and do the recurring revenue and do a lot of great things. But yeah, before we came into the picture, even another solution in the market. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, even the technical stuff, like a lot of IT companies deal with Microsoft, for example, right?
Yeah.
Some of the stuff Microsoft puts out, you're like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. Like, I got to actually come back and ask questions because I'm like, you wrote this in such a way that, like, it could mean 5 different things. Like, what are you actually saying here? I mean, I would say lawyers probably something similar, right? When they put out law, it's like, what are you trying to say here, right? Like, can you just talk regularly so I can get what you're saying instead of like this legalese? So the compliance, I feel like maybe I'm wrong. I feel like lawyers wrote some of the compliances, right? It's like, you
Yeah.
like dumb it down for me. Is there a compliance for dummies? Is there a book out there? I don't know. Like, make it make sense. This piece of pizza costs $2. Okay, I know, I understand what you're saying. I want pepperoni in my pizza. Maybe it costs me $2.50. Like, I don't need it to make, to be a whole different language.
Yeah. No, and you're right. And you're right. And this is why it's so expensive, because you need to get all of those lawyers that translate it to you, which is compliance expert. And again, they are super professional. We work with many of them, right? Don't get me wrong. But it's dependent on your maturity of the company level and how much money do you have to spend. Because if you're okay with and you have money to spend on it, which is fine, go and do that like that. They're amazing people. They do amazing job. They're super smart. But if you don't and you must do it, then here you are in a big problem, because now you are in California, you need to follow the CCPA, or you're in Europe, you need to follow the GDPR, and they came into the picture, the FTC safeguard, and tons of regulation that comes, and you must require doing so. So how do you, again, as a small medium business, can handle that during your MSP that have or don't have a minimal or don't have the skills for implement those? So now you, both of you.
So
Yeah.
hold on a second though. Doesn't the size of the company play a part here, right? Like, if let's say you are a US company, let's use this example, and somebody finds you online from Europe, and they're like, hey, I just need you to do this one thing. I see that you do that. Can you give me a price? If that transaction isn't, like, let's say it's a few $1,000s of labor, are you now under, or aren't you too small for GDPR? Aren't you too small? Like, isn't there a threshold?
No, once you're handling citizens' data of the European, then you must follow GDPR. Period.
It could be zero.
Zero. You save data of European citizen, you must follow GDPR. Even if you just store their name, mail, and phone number, and that's all.
But isn't that public information? Like, can I Google that?
Yeah, you can.
So what, like, why is it so protected if it's just publicly available?
Because the idea of the privacy compliance, it's like, how do you handle if it's maturity of handling those data? So the framework say not only how do you store and store the data, it's when someone asking for you getting their data, do you delete it and you give him and you keep the data only for the period of time that you requested. For example, let's assume that you are doing a pizza order. Let's take this example. Now, someone from Europe calling to Deep Dish Pizza in Chicago to have a direct flight to UK to give them the Deep Dish Pizza, right? And now they store their information, credit card information, and they save it for the next order. But you don't know where is the next time they will order it, right? And the European citizens didn't give you the contents to save their data, because you need to have a solid contents. Then you are in a big problem, and you must delete those information. This is just small an example. So, and when you delete it, it's like you must be from everywhere, from the phone call recording, from your database, from your credit card if you're using a recurring process, or even from everywhere. So, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I made it back.
I hope you hear my all my
I caught some of it. So let me give you the reverse, since
yeah.
I like to order a lot of pizza everywhere I go. So if I'm at an event in the UK, I know that's slightly different because I don't know, they broke off or whatever, Brexit, but like, let's say I order 50 pizzas one night because, like, everybody's out late. I just want to take care of people. And I go online, I order 50 pizzas, I put in my credit card, but I'm not a UK citizen. I'm not an EU citizen. I'm from the US. Does the same rules apply?
No, it depends. It depends on which region you are. For example, if you're from California and someone handling California citizen information, so it comes to the same. It's GDPR side. It really depends where you came from and what you're doing. Then the government can suit you, or the SA. This is how the GDPR guys call it, supervisory authority. They can suit you. For example, Meta, Facebook get fined, and Google get fined. Google in other company, not Europe. Google in another region. They have many companies. They get fined because of they didn't handle correctly European citizen information.
That's interesting. So
Yeah,
hold
a
on.
few months ago.
Let me just throw one wrinkle in there though. So back to
I
the
like your
pizza
Regal
shop,
chair.
since we love pizza.
Yeah,
They're using the company credit card.
yeah.
How does the pizza place and their system provider know that you're from a place that has compliance attached to you? Right? Like, like it's not obvious. Do I have to now ask questions when they go to check out? Where are you located? Where are you from? Like, how do you?
This is a big problem. It's a big problem. So there is many way, if you're talking around this thing, there is many way to handle it. So, and we used to do it in the previous company that I used to work. We did a telephony system. And what we say, it's like, first of all, where is the region that where is the city that you want to order the pizza? Okay. And then you start having insight where it came from. So for example, if you are, let's assume that if you are staying in UK, you will not order from Belgian pizza, right? So, but then you need to understand then your color, what is a region. So it really depends. So the best thing that you can do is just, if someone order for you a pizza, don't record the call, plus don't save any data. Then you are good to go, right? And again, I'm not a lawyer, but
if you don't have it, they can't ask for it. Is that what you're saying?
That's all.
Okay.
It's
Got it.
advice, right? So
That's interesting.
yeah, so
that's a good rule in a lot of areas, I think. So back to the average MSP, right? I mean, there's so many of them, right? At least in the US, there's could be 60, 70,000 MSPs, but what are the base like? So what you probably have like a macro view on the people you're working with, right?
Yeah.
What are you seeing generally as the base compliance, the base frameworks?
CIS.
Okay.
Yeah. CIS, people like it, and I see more adoption on CSF because it's a little bit more technical. But most of the people that I'm working with in US, they like the CIS framework.
Okay. And that gets updated pretty much annually, from my understanding, right? So there's changes.
There's changes all the time.
It seems like the compliances are kind of like flavor of the week to some degree. I heard for 2 years CMMC was the one. And then all of a sudden I heard, and then there was NIST. There's some people who are on the left, CMMC, and then right, NIST. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, CMMC, I guess, got watered down, or it never got deployed or redeployed. I don't know what happened. And then all of a sudden, like, here comes, CIS, right? And then I feel like, every time somebody makes a decision, like it's like, we're gonna throw that in the trash. Now we're gonna go over here. Like, why is there not a defined route? Is it just there's too many cooks in the kitchen?
I think yes, and they can't find the right chef for them. So, so for my opinion, it's most of the framework is quite the same. So, and you must find the one that are very tailor-made for you as an MSP and for your clients, because you manage their infrastructure. So you must find the right framework that suits you the most. So CMMC, for example, is based on NIST 101 and 171 and 172, right? So these are the CMMC, but CMMC it's only to who's handling with the DoD. But if you're again a general, so I may consider you right now in the US, what I see in most, it's CIS and CSF, because are not so hard and are easy, and they suit to most of the MSPs. MSP more that want to have more technical stuff, they following the CSF. But again, it's only the people that that I'm working with, so it's maybe change in other places. So it really depends. I spoke with a
Okay.
lot.
So
So
let's talk. So since CIS seems to be the most popular from what you're saying, like, could you get CIS done in a month? At least the beginning part of it, or is it a year to get it done? Because like the SOC, to do a SOC 2, you need at least a year, right? I don't think you could do it faster. So CIS, like, what's the general time involvement?
it's depend because CIS it's not a audit. It's not an auditable. You can audit it with some expert, but it's not mandatory to do an audit like SOC 2 that you must have the CPA that come to audit for you to do the audit to you. But it depends on how much you work in adoption and how you implement it. And what system do you use? So I saw that people implement CS in 6 months. So, and even 3 months. It depends on how much time they invest on it, and how much and how easy and how easy set of tools they have to implement and maintain it. Again, it's not only to implement, it's also the maintain, because for example, if you have a new employee that come into your company, they need now follow CIS. So you need to have the possibility to monitor that and give them the right policy, training, and etc. You have a new supplier. Okay, how do you make sure that he's following CIS, or or those under the policy that you write by the CIS controls? So it depends. It depends from 3 to 6 months. Depend on the company size, how many solutions do they have, how many evidence collection do they do, if they have policy, they don't have policy, and if they have the right solution for them.
Okay. And then like if you were, I guess it's a variable. So if you could give a range, that would be okay too. Is that the $30,000 investment? Is that the $10,000? Like I'm sure it depends on the size and all the other things you just talked about, but like what's a ballpark?
It's around, don't quote me, but it's around 30 grand, something like that, for my opinion. Not for my opinion, for numbers that I see in the market. It's around 30 grand because only implement CIS or any other control, people estimated it's around 60 to 100 hours, depend on the company size. And then they have the maintenance is around 16 hours a month to maintain those things. So yeah, this is a ballpark. This is what I see from MSP that I'm working with. This is how they do. We shorten this time dramatically, 50 to 70%, because in our solution.
Number one, that sounds fantastic. But number two, like, what happens in the 16-ish hours of monthly maintenance to like keep up with the compliance? Like, what do you have to do generally?
So most of the time is doing a weekly calls with the top management, the steering committee of those compliance framework, those compliance and in the company side. If there is any change, monitor and do changes on the infrastructure. Make sure that the policy is updated, people are following it. If there is a new supplier, make sure that the supply chain that they following the compliance. It's like when you get into the audit day, you don't need to spend another 100 hours because you maintain it all the time, and you make sure when you go to the audit again, then you're okay. Especially when you do CIS and CSF and those kind of stuff that you don't want to bring an auditor. You must make sure you're following these frameworks all the time. So if there is any changes, if someone add a new solution to their stack of softwares, if configuration is changed, if there is update, if you find vulnerability, how do you handle that? So because you're as an MSP, you want all the time to be on a spot of a single source of truth of security. Why? Because if your client will bring someone else to do it, then they push you to they pushing you for doing that, and you cannot do upsells and do more business from the compliance. Because for me, as I see it, compliance is an opportunity, right? Why? I'll tell you why. It's simple. Because if as an MSP you can sell right now EDR, antivirus, doesn't matter what, and now your client following compliance, they must do it right now. And now if someone else telling them to do it, and then you can say them, oh, you can do it that way or other way. Oh, I can give you those solutions from someone that I know in a discount. Then you're losing money. Yeah, and you as an MSP, they most all the time be in a spot that they're like, the one who handle all their compliance infrastructure, all their security infrastructure, be a thought leader with their clients, right? So then they can do more money from compliance, and it can be an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the end customers that know that they have to do it, that's awesome, because like there's not a lot of education needed from the other side to say, this is why you need to do this, or like, yeah, we already know we need to do this. Let's talk about what it takes, right?
Yeah.
But I feel still, especially in the smaller customers, they're like, I'm too small for this. This, like I need to be bigger before I have to worry about this, or nobody's forcing my hand to go down this road. So until I have to, let's just keep the lights on and don't worry about the rest of this. And like, I still feel like that's a large part of the conversation for some reason.
You're right. It's all about education. Even it's come even bigger when you come to the small companies, because most of the bridges are for the small medium businesses right now, and it will be growing. This is what we see on the numbers. And
Yeah.
MSP should educate their clients about compliance and why it's important. So people don't care they don't have multi-factor authentication. They do care what is the result of that. So this is what MSP should show them, and maybe do some use cases, testimonial. We're working with our MSP about it, and we give them a testimonial, use cases and examples, and tools that we have in the platform that help them to sell not compliance, sell risks. And people get understand, because they don't have multi-factor authentication, they're exposed to that risk. Okay, now let's see, how do we mitigate? We must follow some compliance framework. Easy. So it's all about education.
What do you say to the MSPs out there who are like, hey, my customers just won't pay for full-blown compliance. I'll do as much as I can to call it, it's like compliance light, right? It's like, I'm going to do the things that the compliances are going to ask for up to a certain point. I'm going to implement things. I'm going to make sure that like you're doing the security focused things, but I may not go through a full-blown CIS for the end customer.
I like your question, because we call it land and expand approach. So we say to our client, our MSP that don't want to start from compliance framework, let's start with the basic. Just manage risks, that's all, and do the basics: multi-factor authentication, strong password, EDR, small things that are very simple, that are common, right? But managing risks. When you educate your client during doing QBRs, maybe weekly, maybe monthly calls with them, show them, look, this is what we cover, this is all the risk we are found, this is how we handling that. So what do you think right now? If you want to take it to the next step, we should do that. Okay, not ready this month, let's talk about next month. Then you show them progress. We used to be this risk, because your decision is to install EDR, the risk has been reduced. You see, now how do you reduce your exposure? So it's about land and expand approach. This is what we believe on, and it seems to work very well. So but again, it's a question, come to the picture, the liability. So, and again, for me, it's hard to say what is the right. I wish that everyone would do compliance, because this is what needs to be done, right? So they must secure their company, their business. But if not, we recommend to start from the basics and educate your client during, not only just saying that, also show them something and work with them. It's like 1 hour a month of working, and you can change dramatically your everything in your client and the MSP client infrastructure. Why? Because you show them a risk and you show them progress. That's all.
I talk to the Matt Lees of the world a lot, and they say, it's like Microsoft, right? Anybody can go online to 365.com, put in a credit card, agree to a plan, sign up for a plan, you're on your way. But the opening position of 365, even their cybersecurity score is low.
Yeah.
Right. They say, hey, you should do all these things to get your score higher. But when they just give it to you, you open up that pizza box from Microsoft, it's like, oh, well, it's like a 50. And so why is it that they don't turn that around and say, it's secure when we give it to you, you have to turn it off rather than have to turn it on? Why is that? There it is. Simple answer, huh? Okay.
DCD, I tell you, because once the first time that we handle Office 365, I think it was 2 years ago, and we just and then Office 365 told us, okay, you are 40% compliance. Amazing. Now you need to do this and that and that. You need to move to the premium account. Now I move to premium account. No, it's not enough. Let's move to the other package, to higher package. Then you find yourself paying around $70 a month per user for all the security infrastructure. Only for Office 365, right? If people, if they were good with us, so it's maybe what used to be the opposite, but they want to do money.
Interesting.
Opinion.
So what you're saying is you can't even get to a really good security score until you actually pay more.
This is what happened to us. It's funny because this is exactly what happened. And when I spoke with my MSP in Israel, told me, okay, you need to upgrade, then you need to upgrade, then you need to upgrade, then you need to upgrade, all the time upgrades. Okay, when it stop. So what we did,
And you
it's
have the
like
highest option, right?
yeah, but what we did, it's like buying different solution, not per user, but per infrastructure that cover what Office 365 can do, and use open source tools to manage all of those infrastructures. Many ways to handle one simple thing. But this is my opinion only, so, and what I'm facing with.
Interesting. So it is literally like it's like the McDonald's ice cream machine. It's always broken. Like they sold them a unit that's designed to fail, and you need to
Absolutely.
actually fix it to keep it working.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's even in Azure, when you're running a platform in Azure. You're first of all starting with 40% not secure. Now you want to add log aggregation. Awesome. Pay $1,000 for 100 from 100 giga. Cool. So now you move to 50%. Now we need to have cloud security. Another $1,000, another $2,000. So yeah.
But I did hear Microsoft. I know we're running out of time, but like not even 4 months ago, didn't Microsoft get caught in a pretty big scandal? Like their tokens were out there, all these governments got hacked.
Yes.
Then like Microsoft the next day was like, we're just gonna start giving you some more stuff. Just here you go, you can have it.
I tell you something that a good friend, MSP good friend, told me once. When we start work together, you can't put all of your balls in the same pack. Why?
Yeah.
When you use Office 365, you can use their own MFA, because once Office 365 got hacked, then your MFA got hacked too. So you may use another solution to do your MFA, right? So I never thought about it in the beginning, like last year, something like that, because I say, oh, they give me everything. Woo, it's amazing. Why need to pay extra? But a few months ago, as you say, there was exposure. So, okay, what's happening here? Is it safe to put everything in the same pack? Use everything? Maybe not. So, but again, it's a matter of budget.
I just find it it's always intriguing to me when the big guy has a problem, everyone goes like, I guess there's nothing we can do. But if it's anybody else, it's, get rid of them, find somebody else. Why? I think that's just funny.
Yeah, it's all about marketing, my friend. It's all about that. They position themselves, they're a strong company, they sell everything, they in every price. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing about them. So they fine, they're good, but it's all about money, and that's all, for my opinion.
Interesting. Shay, where do people find out more information about Kamanja, what it looks like, how do MSPs figure out like what the plan is, like maybe talk to somebody? Where do they start?
So they can find us on kamanja.io. They can find me on LinkedIn, Shay Cohen or Martin Perkins. They can reach out. There is a link there to book a demo. You can book a demo directly with us. Talk with us more. If you have an MSP, have any doubts, do you want any 1 hour consulting, 30 minutes consulting, feel free. We are willing to help everyone just to make sure they're in the right direction.
By the way, where did you get the name Kamanja?
It's a good story. So Kamanja, it's one of the oldest violin in the world. It's have the most precise melody tune in the world of violins. So our vision is simplify compliance for MSP and their client, but we precise it directly to their sizes.
Got it. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. That's I just, it's such a cool name. I'm like, where did you just make that word up? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah. And
Uh,
if you see on the logo on the top, there is the stick of the violin. You
I
see?
see it. I see it. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good logo. Shai, thanks for coming on. I don't know if you're planning to come over for anything before now and the end of the year. I know, like, there's only so many airplanes you can be on, but hopefully we'll run into you soon. For everyone else, check this out. If this guy's pitch is, hey, if you're gonna do the compliances, don't ask me. This is what everybody's saying. It has to happen in order to get there. But if their platform really does take 50% less of time, well, that time has a quantifiable value, especially in this business. So I think that's worth just even looking into. So
Thank
there
you
it
very
is.
much.
This session was recorded. We're going to get it online under MSP Initiative.com under sessions. So you guys can rewind. And when you go talk to Martin, maybe, and you say, hey, Shai said this, I don't know what he's talking about. What does that mean? Well, then they'll have the link ready for you. Sorry, my computer just fell on me. But anyway, thank you very much, guys, for joining. Appreciate it. MSPinitiative.com, and Shai will catch you on the other side. Thanks a lot, guys. See ya.